My wife and her mom spoke French at dinner, mocking me. Look at him stuffing his face. You know I never wanted you to marry someone like him, but at least his money is good. They both laughed. I finished my meal. Then I replied in perfect French. Good, because tonight you're leaving with nothing. The color drained from their faces. I'm writing this here because I need to get out of my system, and because if I don't put it somewhere, it's going to keep looping in my head like a bad recording. And yes, I know this sounds unbelievable, but I swear on everything it's exactly how it happened. And if you met my wife or her mother, you'd understand how a moment like that could sit quietly for years waiting to explode. My name is Michael Reynolds. I'm 36. I work as a compliance attorney for a mid-sized firm outside Boston. Not flashy, not exciting, but steady and meticulous, which is a personality trait that apparently makes you invisible if you're married to someone who confuses silence with stupidity. My wife's name is Claire, 32, hasn't worked since the year we got married, art history degree, expensive private college, a lot of opinions about museums and wine and how Americans rush everything. We met at a fundraiser 10 years ago. She was magnetic in the effortless way that makes you feel chosen. I felt lucky. She made it clear early on that money stressed her out, so I handled the finances, paid the bills, set everything to auto-pay. I didn't mind. I trusted her. That trust is important to understand because it's a hinge everything swings on. Her mother, Eleanor Whitmore, 59, lives in New York. Old family money, according to her. Heavy emphasis on old, light emphasis on actual money. She flies in every few months. Stays with us. Critiques everything from my coffee maker to the way I fold towels. And she always speaks French with Claire when she doesn't want to be understood. It's their little private club, or at least it was. And for years I smiled and nodded and pretended I didn't notice the sideways looks or the way Eleanor would sigh when she thought I wasn't listening. I figured it was just cultural friction. People do that. Marriages absorb a lot. 3 months ago, that quiet trust cracked in a very unromantic way when I noticed my checking account was lower than. It should have been not alarmingly low, just wrong. And that's the thing about my job. I noticed wrong. I went through the statements and saw little withdrawals. 300 here, 500 there, always small enough to blend into groceries and utilities. But the pattern was off. I followed it back to a joint credit card Claire and I shared. Purchases at boutiques I'd never heard of, furniture stores I'd never stepped foot in, then Venmo transfers from Claire's account Eleanor's, weekly, sometimes more than once. I didn't confront her. I watched, I waited, I pulled the records. I found $48,000 sitting in Claire's personal account that I didn't know existed, money that came from our joint account, my income, filtered quietly through her name. And when I realized that this wasn't sloppiness or ignorance, but a system, something practiced, something normalized between them, the hurt shifted into something colder. I called my cousin Jack, former military, now a licensed investigator, told him I needed help and didn't ask questions. 2 weeks later, he handed me a folder that laid it out cleanly, elegantly even. Over 3 years, they'd siphoned just over $120,000, half Eleanor, half to Claire's spending. Eleanor's trust had dried up nearly a decade ago. Her condo fees were behind. Her lifestyle was being subsidized by my marriage, by me. And when I sat with that information, I didn't yell or cry. I booked consultations with 3 divorce attorneys. All of them said the same thing, document, don't tip your hand. Let them hang themselves. Leverage matters, proof matters. So I waited, and in that waiting something strange happened. My affection evaporated. I started seeing past conversations differently. The jokes about me being solid, the compliments that always circle back to stability and security. And when Eleanor announced she was extending her visit because New York felt dreary, I smiled and offered to cook dinner that Friday, which shocked Claire because I usually ordered takeout when her mother was around. But this time I wanted them comfortable. I wanted them careless. I spent the afternoon making a slow braised stew I'd learned years ago while studying abroad. The house smelled incredible, candles lit, wine open, the stage set. And yes, I had cameras, small ones, legal in my state of my own home, capturing audio and video, not because I enjoyed spying, but because I needed evidence. That couldn't be argued away as misunderstanding. When we sat down and relaxed, Eleanor made a comment about the table setting. Claire laughed. The food was praised with faint surprise. And then, just like clockwork, they switched to French. Casual at first, then sharper. Eleanor's voice carrying that familiar contempt. Comments about how I ate, how I dressed, how I was useful but unsophisticated. Claire responding with soft agreement, reassuring her mother that while I lacked class, I was at least financially reliable, and there it was, the line that sealed everything. At least his money is good, they laughed, and I let them. I chewed, swallowed, took a sip of wine, set my fork down, looked up, and answered them in flawless French. Not dramatic, not raised, just precise, and the silence that followed was absolute. Eleanor's face drained first, then Claire's, the realization rippling through them that their private world had never been private, that they'd been speaking freely in front of someone who understood every word, every insult, for years. Eleanor stammered, asked how long. Claire tried to interrupt. I didn't let her. I told them calmly that I knew about the money, the transfers, the lies. I switched to English when I said the number, $120,000, because I wanted it to land. I showed them the bank records, the screenshots. The prenup Eleanor herself had insisted on that protected my assets. I slid the divorce papers across the table and told Claire she was being served. Her hand shook so badly she could barely open the folder. Eleanor tried to posture, tried to argue, claimed marriage made everything shared. I corrected her, gently, legally, and when she raised her voice, I stood up and opened the front door. Jack was there, along with my attorney, Susan Park. Calm and lethal in a way only good lawyers are. Susan explained their options, the timeline, the reality. Claire asked where she was supposed to go. I told her mother's condo, then informed Eleanor about the foreclosure notice, the overdue fees, the truth she'd hidden even from her daughter, and in that moment the alliance between them cracked. Eleanor accused Claire of incompetence. Claire accused Eleanor of manipulation, and I watched two people who treated me like furniture turn on. Each other with startling speed. They packed what they could carry. Eleanor tried to take a framed print off the wall, claiming it was sentimental. Jack stopped her and told her it stayed. Claire cried, begged, promised therapy, promised work, promised change. And I realized none of it included remorse, only fear. When the door closed behind them, the house felt larger, quieter, mine. The next weeks unfolded exactly as you'd expect. If you've ever seen Consequences finally catch up to entitlement. Claire tried calling, emailing, showing up. I changed the locks. Eleanor called from block numbers, alternating between threats and pleas. Susan filed a civil suit. Eleanor attempted to flee back to Europe. The DA got involved because wire fraud across state lines is a federal issue. Eleanor was stopped at the airport, arrested, released on bail she barely scraped together. Claire moved back in with her. The condo went into foreclosure anyway. Mediation failed because there was no money to offer, only promises. And I held the line not because I wanted to punish them, but because I refused to clean up messes I didn't make anymore. The divorce finalized quickly thanks to the prenup. No alimony, no assets. Claire signed everything with hollow eyes. Months later, Eleanor was convicted, served time, deported after release. Claire left the country to stay with relatives. The judgment in my favor went uncollected, and strangely that didn't bother me, because what I'd regained wasn't the money but the clarity. The house is quiet now, peaceful. I make coffee in the mornings and drink it without commentary. I eat how I want, live how I want. And when I think back to that dinner, it isn't the humiliation I remember, but the stillness right before I spoke, the moment I chose myself without raising my voice, without asking permission. And if there's a conclusion to all of this, it's this: trust should never require blindness. Love should never cost your dignity. And anyone who mistakes your silence for ignorance is eventually going to learn the difference the hard way.